Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin with a truth that most people ignore because it feels too simple, too uncomfortably obvious. The truth is this: attitude is more important than skill. You can take the most gifted, technically brilliant person in the room, and if they carry a poisoned, defeated, or entitled mindset, they will never amount to more than wasted potential. On the other hand, you can take someone who starts with nothing, with no resources, no connections, no impressive resume, and if they carry the right attitude, they will move mountains, create opportunities, and carve a legacy where others only saw walls. This is not motivational fluff. This is neuroscience, psychology, and biology in action. Your brain is not a fixed machine. It's a dynamic plastic organ that rewires itself every single day based on how you think, how you respond, and how you interpret the world around you. Skills can be learned, techniques can be trained, but attitude shapes whether your brain even bothers to engage, whether it seeks solutions or shuts down at the first sign of resistance. Attitude is the software that dictates how the hardware of your brain operates. Let me give you an example. I once studied two groups of medical students. One group came from top-tier universities, stacked with brilliant individuals, high IQs, perfect test scores. The other group had far fewer credentials, lower scores, nothing that screamed future medical genius. But here's what happened. The second group, the ones with less technical pedigree, outperformed the first in high-stress clinical environment. Why? Because when reality hit, patients crashing, blood everywhere, the uncertainty of life and death, the brilliant ones folded under pressure. They had the skill, but not the resilience. The second group, they had the attitude that said, I don't care what I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'll adapt. I'll push through. And that mindset allowed their brains to access creative problem-solving circuits that skill alone cannot unlock. You see, the brain under stress either collapses or becomes sharper. The deciding factor is not knowledge, it's attitude. If your attitude tells you this is impossible, I can't handle this, the brain releases cortisol, floods your system with stress hormones, narrows your focus, and literally blinds you from options that are right in front of you. But if your attitude says, this is tough, but I'll rise to it, your brain releases dopamine, norepinephrine, and adrenaline in a balance that heightens focus, increases memory recall, and sharpens problem-solving ability. It's chemistry, not chance. I've seen this play out in business, in medicine, in athletics, and even in the military. Take the Navy SEALs, for instance. Do you know what the most important factor is when they decide who makes it through Hell Week? It's not who can swim the fastest or who can run the farthest. It's not the biggest guy or the strongest woman. It's attitude. It's who refuses to quit when the water is freezing, when the body is screaming, when the instructors are in your face telling you to ring the bell and go home. They've studied this for years. The people who make it through are rarely the ones you'd bet on if you only looked at their physical skill set. It's the ones who show up with a relentless, unshakable attitude. Now let's step back from extreme examples. Look at your own life. Think about the people you know who are brilliant, talented, and yet stuck. They had all the potential in the world, but something in their mindset sabotaged them. They got comfortable. They got entitled. They got lazy. And then think about the ones who had less. Maybe they weren't the smartest in school. Maybe they didn't have the money. Maybe they didn't have the perfect resume. But they were hungry, they were disciplined, and they were willing to outwork and outlast everyone else. 10 years later, who's ahead? It's not the one with the best skill set. It's the one who refused to break, who carried the right attitude into every room, every challenge, every setback. Science tells us that skill acquisition follows attitude. There's something in neuroscience called deliberate practice. It's the gold standard for mastering any skill: music, surgery, programming, athletics. But here's the thing. Deliberate practice requires failure. It requires making mistakes, sometimes thousands of them. If you don't have the right attitude toward failure, you will never engage in the level of practice required to become great. You'll quit too soon, you'll protect your ego, you'll retreat into comfort. But with the right attitude, failure becomes feedback, it becomes fuel. Every mistake wires your brain more effectively, sharpens your circuits, and pushes you closer to mastery. Skill is downstream of attitude. I've worked with executives who thought skill was everything. They wanted to hire only the top resumes, the most polished credentials, the pedigrees dripping with prestige. And then they couldn't understand why their companies were filled with fragile, disengaged employees who cracked under pressure. On the flip side, I've seen leaders who hired people with raw drive, hunger, and the willingness to learn. These people transformed entire organizations. They came in without all the skills, but their attitude made them teachable, adaptable, and relentless. Within a year, they weren't just catching up, they were leading. There's a story about Thomas Edison that I've always loved. When he was trying to invent the light bulb, he failed thousands of times. Thousands. Most people would have quit after 10. But when asked about those failures, Edison said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's attitude. His skills in chemistry and engineering mattered, yes, but they were useless without the attitude to keep pushing, keep experimenting, keep adapting. The legacy was not built on skill, it was built on the attitude that refused to quit. Now, some of you are probably thinking, "But what if I don't have the skills? Don't I need them at some point?" Of course you do. I'm not saying skill doesn't matter. Skill is important. But skill without the right attitude is like a Ferrari without fuel. It goes nowhere. Attitude is the fuel that drives skill, develops skill, and maximizes skill. Without it, your talent rots. Think about brain injuries. I've treated patients who suffered traumatic brain injuries, strokes, or neurodegenerative diseases. The prognosis often depends less on the severity of the injury and more on the patient's attitude. Some patients give up, accept decline, and deteriorate faster than expected. Others fight, push through rehab, retrain their brains, and regain functions that doctors thought were lost forever. The brain listens to attitude. The body follows mindset. Science has proven this. Neuroplasticity thrives in those who believe they can improve, who approach recovery with grit and determination. This is why I'm telling you, if you had to choose between being the smartest or the hungriest, choose hungry every single time. If you had to choose between being technically perfect or mentally relentless, choose relentless. Because skill can be taught, skill can be acquired, but attitude is the foundation on which everything else rests. And here's the kicker. Attitude is contagious. Walk into a room with a defeated, cynical mindset and you will drag everyone down with you. But walk in with conviction, resilience, and certainty, and people will feel it, they will follow it. Teams rise and fall, not on skill, but on attitude. A team of average players with a championship mindset will destroy a team of all-stars with no heart. I want you to take this not as a motivational cliche, but as a challenge. Look at your own life, your career, your relationships. Ask yourself, am I relying on skill alone? Am I hiding behind credentials, certifications, experience, thinking they will carry me? Or am I sharpening the most important weapon I have, my attitude? Because when everything else is stripped away, when the money dries up, when the opportunities vanish, when the world tests you, what you have left is your attitude. And that will determine whether you rise again or disappear. Let me leave you with this. You don't need to be the smartest. You don't need to be the most talented. You don't need to have the perfect plan, but you damn well need to have the right attitude. Because attitude makes you unbreakable. Attitude makes you unstoppable. Attitude is the difference between living as a statistic and living as a story worth telling. When you understand that attitude shapes not only your psychology, but also your biology, you begin to see why it is the ultimate differentiator. There are studies showing that people with optimistic attitudes heal faster from surgery, fight off infections more effectively, and even live longer than their pessimistic counterparts. Their immune systems literally function differently because their brains tell their bodies, we're not done yet. Think about that. The way you choose to perceive your circumstances changes how your cells behave. That is not philosophy, that's biochemistry. And the same principle applies to performance in every arena. I've watched young scientists in labs who weren't the most technically skilled with microscopes or assays, yet they discovered breakthroughs simply because they refused to give up when experiments failed. Their peers with sharper technical skills often walked away after the third or fourth failure, while the ones with grit, with attitude, stayed, recalibrated, and eventually found the answer. You tell me, which one actually changes the world? The one with skill and no resilience, or the one with relentless resilience and a willingness to learn as they go? Attitude is not about blind positivity. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. That's delusion, not strength. Attitude is about choosing your response when the storm hits. It's about cultivating a mindset that says, no matter what comes, I will adapt, I will fight, I will keep moving. That mindset creates neural pathways of resilience. Every time you choose not to break, you're training your brain to stay strong the next time. You're building a neurological callus, like lifting weights builds muscle. Now let me share something from the field of elite athletics. I've worked with athletes who had incredible natural gifts, speed, strength, coordination, that should have made them unbeatable. But when pressure mounted, when the championship was on the line, they choked. Why? Because their attitude couldn't handle the moment. Then I've seen less talented athletes, the ones who weren't even supposed to be there, rise up and crush the competition. Their skill alone shouldn't have been enough, but their attitude under pressure unleashed whatever skill they had at the exact right time. That's the hidden equation. Attitude multiplies skill. Without it, skill divides itself into nothing. Let's talk about failure for a moment. Every one of you in this room has failed at something. Maybe it was a business that collapsed, a relationship that ended, a goal that never materialized. The failure itself isn't what defined you. What defined you was your attitude toward it. Did you crawl into a hole and decide life was unfair? Or did you treat it as a lesson, as a stepping stone? Neuroscience proves that the brain encodes experiences based on the emotional state surrounding them. If you fail with a defeated attitude, your brain wires failure as shame, avoidance, paralysis. But if you fail with an attitude of learning, your brain wires failure as growth, as a trigger for innovation. One failure plants the seed of resilience, the other plants the poison of fear. The event is the same, the difference is attitude. I remember a young entrepreneur I mentored years ago. He was in his 20s, broke, with no formal business education. By all traditional measures, he was unqualified to succeed, but his attitude was ferocious. He treated every rejection as feedback, every obstacle as a puzzle, every small win as fuel. 10 years later, he built a company valued in the hundreds of millions. Meanwhile, I knew another man, MBA, prestigious degree, perfect connections. He quit after his first big loss and spent the next decade blaming the market, the investors, the timing. Skill versus attitude. One man became a story of triumph. The other became a footnote. Both true, skill is cheap. You can buy skill in the form of consultants, training programs, technology, even artificial intelligence. But attitude cannot be outsourced, cannot be bought, cannot be faked. It's either in you or it's not. And the good news is, you can cultivate it. You can train yourself to approach challenges differently, to expect resistance, to welcome difficulty, to see adversity not as an enemy, but as a teacher. That's what separates those who grow from those who rot. Let me give you a glimpse from medicine again. Patients with chronic pain often fall into two categories. The first group succumbs, accepts pain as their permanent state, and loses hope. Their brains reinforce the pain pathways because their attitude keeps telling the nervous system, this is who we are now. The second group fights. They engage in therapy, exercise, mindset shifts. Their pain doesn't magically vanish, but their brain rewires itself to dampen the signals, to open new pathways of function. The same body, the same diagnosis, but two entirely different lives, dictated by attitude. And this is why I say attitude is more important than skill. Not because skill doesn't matter, but because skill is powerless without the right mental state to direct it. You can take a man with all the medical knowledge in the world, and if his attitude toward patients is cold, detached, or arrogant, he will be a terrible doctor. But give me a doctor with average technical skill, but an attitude of empathy, relentless curiosity, and hunger to improve, and I'll show you someone who saves lives. The world didn't reward the most skilled. It rewards the most resilient. History proves this. Great leaders, inventors, revolutionaries, they weren't always the smartest. Many of them were laughed at, underestimated, told they weren't good enough, but they carried an attitude that refused to listen, refused to stop, refused to accept anything less than their vision. They learned along the way. They grew into their skills because their attitude demanded it. I want you to think carefully about where this applies in your life right now. Maybe it's your career. Maybe you've convinced yourself you can't apply for the next level because you don't have every skill listed on the job description. That's nonsense. Skills can be learned on the job. What employers can't teach is hunger, drive, and resilience. Or maybe it's your health. You're waiting until you know more about diet or fitness before you start. Forget that. Start with the right attitude. The details will come. Or maybe it's relationships. You think you lack the skill to communicate, to love better, to lead better. Skills can be trained. What matters is the attitude that says, I will show up, I will try, I will grow. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to flatter you. I'm here to challenge you. You have to decide which side you're on. Will you be the person with all the talent who dies with regret because your attitude betrayed you? Or will you be the person who maybe started with less, but built a life of impact because your attitude refused to break? That choice is yours. Every morning, in the first thought you think, in the first action you take, you are programming your brain, setting your chemistry, choosing your trajectory. Attitude will decide whether you see obstacles or opportunities. Attitude will decide whether you stop at the first no or push until you hear yes. Attitude will decide whether you let fear dictate your life or whether you stare fear in the face and move anyway. Skill may open a door, but attitude is what keeps you walking when the hallway turns dark. And here's what I want you to remember. Life doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care how talented you were supposed to be, how much potential you had, or how many skills you collected. Life will test you, grind you, and strip you down to your essence. And when it does, the only thing left that truly matters is the attitude you bring. That is what will carry you forward, rebuild you, and allow you to leave a mark. So carry yourself with the attitude of resilience, of relentless pursuit, of hunger. Walk into every room with the posture of someone who refuses to quit. Because when you do, the skills will follow, the opportunities will multiply, and your life will become proof of the truth I begin with. Attitude is more important than skill. When all is said and done, life will not remember you for the certificates on your wall, the titles after your name, or the technical tricks you mastered. Those things fade. What endures is the spirit you carried into the fight. The attitude that refused to bow, that refused to compromise, that refused to let circumstances dictate destiny. Skills decorate a resume, but attitude builds a legacy. You will not always be the smartest, you will not always be the most skilled, but you can always choose to be the one who doesn't quit, the one who stands when others fall, the one who sees possibility where others see nothing but walls. That choice is available to you every day, in every challenge, in every moment of weakness. So as you walk out of here tonight, don't ask yourself, do I have the skills? Ask yourself, do I have the attitude to build them, to sharpen them, to wield them with purpose? Because the world doesn't belong to the most talented, it belongs to the most determined. And if you decide, truly decide, to carry the right attitude, then there is no wall too high, no storm too violent, no setback too crushing to keep you from the life you were meant to build. That power is in you. It always has been. Now the only question left is, will you use it?